this is the Constitution, this is the way U.S. works, and this is the way it's always going to be. It's just not the case.
So when I say that Donald Trump launched an illegal attack on the Constitution with his executive order defining undocumented immigrants and their children as non-citizens, even if they were born here, well, guess what? I'm calling that really bad and very authoritarian because that wasn't a ratification of a new amendment with approval of 75% of Congress. It was the executive order of one man. Carson, take it away. Why the hell do you support Trump, bud?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to first bring up, Dean. Like, I watched you quite a bit, Parker too a little bit, but I noticed when you're debating, you bring up the Constitution in relation to Trump a lot.
Yeah, I do. It's one of the most important things to me.
Right. So the Constitution is one of the most important things to you. You know what the 18th Amendment is, right?
Not off the top of my head.
Right. So the 18th Amendment was the prohibition of alcohol.
Right.
Okay, and that was amended, right? That was amended in the Constitution because we found it to be, I don't know. There was a couple reasons why we did. Right?
The main reason was because like people just continued to drink alcohol in an unsafe manner. Did you know that they even tried to poison the alcohol supply? The supply to get people to stop drinking.
Alcohol is poison.
No, they put actual poison in it that would kill people, and they thought if people knew that, then they'd stop drinking it. But they just didn't. Anyways, interesting. So how does this relate?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying it relates in the sense of like you're using the Constitution to basically like with Trump's actions, people's whole controversial views on if he's actually using the courts to deport people, right? Like I feel like that's a lot of your stance using the Constitution in that way.
No, my biggest issue with him in the Constitution is trying to illegally overturn the 14th.
Illegally. Are you talking about like trying to amend the amendment?
He passed a executive order banning birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants. It was such a gross attack on one of the most important amendments of the totality of the Constitution.
Right. So what I'm trying to put in perspective for you here is that throughout U.S. history, okay, we're still at the very beginning, but throughout U.S. history, we've always, or not, I guess not always, but we've made changes to the Constitution, right?
We have to do it with the use of the legal means. Like we can't support just like illegally terminating the Constitution. If we want to amend it, we have to do it through the ratification process in Congress.
Yeah, exactly. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is you can acknowledge that the Constitution could have faults or has not had enough added to it.
Of course, it's not perfect. And in fact, you brought up a good example, the 18th Amendment and prohibition. Like, obviously, I do think that like the sale of alcohol like should be legal for like a multiplicity of reasons, most of them being pragmatic reasons. But like even if prohibition was still in effect today and Donald Trump passed an executive order just saying, well, now it's legal, I still wouldn't support that. I think that we'd have to amend and ratify a new amendment through Congress to overturn the 18th, and that's exactly what they ended up doing. The moment that we suggest that the checks and balances as detailed by the Constitution, delegating the power for ratification of new amendments to Congress by just saying that the president could overturn it with his word through a sign and EO, is the moment where we just throw the checks and balances in which make America America out the fucking window. That's the moment we just reintroduce the authoritarianism that we saw in England that caused, individuals to move away and to declare independence. And I feel like that's just so important, not only for core American values, but also for the safety of Americans. It's because those checks and balances ensure that at the end of the day, our system is going to be as reliable as it can be, even if we have a handful of bad actors. But then when we give the bad actors that are in power, like total power to do whatever they want, that's the moment we go from a constitutional republic or a democracy and turn into an authoritarian regime. And that's what Donald Trump wants. He wants an authoritarian regime where his word is final. And honestly, if you agree with him and you side with him passing an executive order to overturn the 14th Amendment, and you also think his word is final, then you don't look at him like a president. You don't look at him like one part of a multifaceted machine with checks and balances. You look at him like a king.
Well, while we're on the subject of the Constitution, I was going to ask, are you aware what the 16th Amendment is?
Can you respond to what I said first, please? That'd be very meaningful.
Well, yeah. Here's what I think the argument boils down to is your beliefs in what the specific person thinks that the U.S. Constitution, what it means first, and then how they interpret it, and then second, their own beliefs that they want.
Repeat that in a way that makes sense.
Okay, so people individually interpret the Constitution in different ways. Okay, we've had often throughout history, that's why we have courts, is because we try to figure out what the Constitution actually means.
Yeah, but we
right?
already have very clear case law to demonstrate what the 14th actually means. There's no room for interpretation there.
I'm talking in general.
Okay, well, I'm not, okay, because I'm talking about the 14th Amendment, and
Well,
that's what
great,
Donald Trump is
but I'm
launching an
talking in
attack
general.
on. Well,
Okay,
well,
so
then stop talking in generalities and talk about the
what's the
specific attack
16th
that I
Amendment?
pointed out. 16th Amendment is collecting taxes. But once
Yeah,
again,
it's
I still want you to be able to reference the 14th
no, it's not
Amendment
taxes. It's
and-
federal
and
income
the-
tax. Okay,
It's not
attack-
taxes, it's federal income tax.
Yeah, real smart guy.
yeah, it's federal income tax. It's not just your ordinary tax. The federal, you know why the
respond to what I
federal income
pointed.
tax was made?
No. You respond to the point that I made in reference to Donald
did.
Trump launching an attack on the 14th. What was your response?
Okay, if he's signing an executive order, he wants to push legal action regarding an amendment in the Constitution that regards the well-being of the U.S. citizens, then that's what his job is.
Wait. Courts don't amend the Constitution. What the fuck are you talking about?
No, I
Congress
didn't say the
amends
courts did.
Constitution.
Did I say the courts amend the Constitution?
Yeah, because you said that he's pushing for
Well, the
legal
US
action
Supreme
to amend the
Court-
Constitution.
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court interprets the Constitution. Yeah,
Yeah, we already
So
have
the courts do.
interpretations of the 14th said as president describing that undocumented immigrants would qualify for equal protection under the 14th Amendment, and that undocumented immigrants as a whole would qualify for
14th
birthright
Amendment.
citizenship under the 14th Amendment. Give me an interpretation of the 14th Amendment that would demonstrate that undocumented immigrants do not have a right to birthright citizenship. Literally give it to me. Describe how you could interpret the first clause of the 14th Amendment, which set forth the criteria for birthright citizenship, to not include the children of undocumented immigrants. Give me the interpretation right now.
Yeah. So I mean, if you want to ask my interpretation of the 14th Amendment, if you're asking me personally, or if you're asking what
Just give me
the
any
US Supreme
possible
Court-
interpretation of the birthright citizenship clause of the 14th to indicate that would exclude the children of undocumented immigrants born here. Interpret it in such a way that would yield that conclusion. I don't even think there's a possible interpretation for that.
Well, no, not right now because it has to be reinterpreted.
Give me the way that they would reinterpret it.
I mean, I guess you would have to do. I mean, I'm not a law writer, but what you'd have to do is you'd have to establish, like, if you were formally already here as a U.S. citizen, or if you were already born here as a U.S. citizen, because what you're doing is you're changing the laws. So you'd have to-
Okay. So now you're recommending an interpretation that explicitly contradicts the text of the 14th Amendment. What are the first two words of the birthright citizenship clause of the 14th?
Dean, that's what amending a constitution is changing it.
No, we were talking about reinterpreting, not amending. Now you're getting lost
Okay,
in the
yeah.
sauce.
Fair.
Okay,
All
so
right.
answer my question. What are the first two words of the birthright citizenship clause of the 14th?
I don't know exactly.
All people, right? So does all people mean all citizens or something else?
People, I'd assume they're referring to human beings, Dean.
Right, there you go. So in other words, you're telling me in order to interpret the Constitution in such a way that would only subject citizens and the children of citizens to have birthright citizenship, you'd have to classify non-citizens as non-people.
Right. Yeah, you'd have to reinterpret it. That's great. I didn't come here to argue the 14th Amendment with you. What I came to argue here was your understanding of the Constitution. Like, I feel like you feel like it's so set in stone that this is the Constitution, this is the way U.S. works, and this is the way it's always going to be. Like, it's just not the case. I mean,
You're just being
basically
disingenuous. You're being disingenuous.
It's not disingenuous. It's pretty genuous.
No, what you're arguing is disingenuous because that's not what I think.
No.
There's two ways.
It's not what you think, so it's disingenuous.
There's two ways to change what the Constitution means. One way to change what the Constitution means is to ratify a new amendment through Congress requiring a 75% approval of a new amendment. And a second way to change what the Constitution means is for SCOTUS to reinterpret it. Right? And what insofar as what already exists. So when I say that Donald Trump launched an illegal attack on the Constitution with his executive order defining undocumented immigrants and their children as non-citizens, even if they were born here, well, guess what? I'm calling that really bad and very authoritarian because that wasn't a ratification of a new amendment with approval of 75% of Congress. It was the executive order of one man. And that wasn't a reinterpretation of case law and the 14th Amendment that's already on the books nor exists because it's not a ruling from our Supreme Court. It's an executive order from one man. So that is incredibly set in stone, dictated via the checks and balances set forth from the Constitution that no, our president cannot change, reinterpret, or amend our Constitution with the use of an executive order. And that is binary. That is black and white. That is night and day. That is set in stone. And for you to act like it isn't just shows either your A, ignorance on the Constitution, American checks and balance is and core American values, or B, how far you're willing to bend the knee to an authoritarian dictator.
Well, I'm libertarian, so I think I'm far from authoritarian. But But Dean, what I'm trying to get to you is that you shouldn't be so fixated on a certain amendment. Like I could be fixated on the 16th Amendment because it's no longer used for war anymore. You know what I mean? It's just you're like, if the government decides that this amendment is no longer supporting or helping out the U.S. citizen,
oh my God,
then it should be changed. It's just how it is, Dean. I'm sorry you're upset about it.
Okay, I'm gonna really hope that you're just ignorant on what the 14th Amendment is compared to being a very evil person.
You didn't even know what the 18th Amendment was, Dean.
Okay.
He's not saying it would be bad to be. He's not saying it'd be bad to be ignorant on it. He's just saying that you should listen to someone who does have understanding of it.
Right. Like for
Well,
you to
you're also
suggest,
ignorant
you just
regarding the
suggested,
Constitution, too.
you just suggested that it's possible that the 14th Amendment is no longer relevant in America today.
I did not say that.
I'm really hoping.
I did not say that.
Yeah, you suggested that was possible because you said to me, Dean, I don't understand why you're so fixated on one amendment. What if it's just not relevant today? That's a suggestion that it's possible that the 14th Amendment is no longer relevant today. In fact, I am so fixated on the 14th Amendment because it is one of the most relevant amendments to the Constitution in America today. Tell me, what all does the 14th Amendment guarantee individuals that are subject to the jurisdiction of this country, sir?
Are you asking what they're guaranteed in the amendment?
Yeah.
It's citizenship.
That's not all. What else, friend?
I mean, to my understanding, that's what the 14th Amendment's about.
Okay. So then you are ignorant on it. So I'll teach you a little bit more about the 14th Amendment.
Thank you, Dean.
So the 14th Amendment doesn't just ensure birthright citizenship to those subject to the jurisdiction of America that are born on American soil. It also guarantees due process. Wow. It also guarantees.
Oh, that too, yeah.
It also guarantees equality. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. The 14th Amendment is the amendment that suggests equality for everybody in similar circumstances, saying that they must be treated equal unless there's good reason not to. Right? The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. It also was the first amendment before the 15th to penalize states for not allowing black men over the age of 21 to vote. It also guarantees that if you were involved in, orchestrated, or a part of an insurrection upon our government, that you cannot serve in a public office, right? And when did the 14th Amendment come into play originally? In 1865. And why was it ratified? As a peace treaty between the North and the South that ended the Civil War. Yeah, the Union forced the Southern states to ratify the 14th Amendment in order to rejoin the Union. And in fact, this amendment has served as a benchmark, right, in pushing for civil rights and civil liberty for all in this country. The 14th Amendment is what led to the Brown v. Board court decision that criminalized racial segregation in schools. The 14th Amendment is what ultimately led to Plyer v. Doe in the 90s suggesting that immigrants have the same access to public facilities such as free school K through 12 that citizens do, residents, right, or even non-residents do. Wow, that's very important.
Okay.
And this is so totally insane for you to suggest is an amendment that is no longer relevant in America today at all, especially when we consider the aspect of due process.
Okay, Dean. Here's the thing. I like that you love the Constitution. This is what I'm going to challenge, okay? Were you pro-quarantine during COVID?
I'm not going to let you pivot. I want to talk to you about Donald Trump's attack on the 14th Amendment.
It's about the Constitution. It's about the First Amendment.
Okay, well, my question to you is more so about how the hell you could support Trump even though he's launched an attack on the 14th.
Hold on, Dean. You like to talk about the Constitution a lot. Let's talk about the right to assemble in the Constitution.
But you're just trying to generalize to pivot. Stop attempting to generalize to pivot.
No, Dean. You know you're not truly pro-Constitution. You're just pro whatever you're in favor of.
Dude, I'm pro having productive dialogue that's on one topic at a time. Obviously, talking about the First Amendment is not going to be relevant to my topic that I brought up about how Donald Trump has launched an attack on the 14th Amendment and attempting to understand how you feel about that.
Dean, we're staying on topic. It's about the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, that once again, I said generalizing to pivot. You could generalize to a broader category in which this would fall under just to pivot, right? Like for instance, if you bring up the argument by saying that you support how Donald Trump, I don't know, Let me give you another example. Imagine how you brought up like the American political topic about how you think that Biden and Harris caused inflation in America in the last 4 years. And I'm not too politically educated, so I can't combat that point, and I can't defend how they didn't cause inflation. So then I generalize to a broader topic in US politics on how Donald Trump's policy is going to cause a lot of inflation today. Well, that's still within the broader topic of American politics, economics, and inflation, but it's still yet a deflection away from your original point, saying that the Biden-Harris administration caused inflation. And that's when I'd argue that, oh no, I'm staying on the topic because we're still talking about inflation. And that's when you'd respond to and say, no, Dean, you're generalizing to pivot. And I'm saying that same thing to you right now because I'm very specifically asking you about Donald Trump's attack on the 14th Amendment. And then you're generalizing to the U.S. Constitution as a whole, hinging on the First Amendment and U.S. and quarantines during COVID in order to pivot. So stay on the very specific topic of Donald Trump and his attack on the 14th because I want to understand how you feel.
Yeah. How about this? This is what I'm going to do regarding the 14th. I'm going to concede and I'm going to say I don't know enough. Okay. But then I would like to come back and ask you a question. I'll ask it since this could be the topic. During quarantine, during COVID, when Biden was our president, did you support quarantining?
Did I support like a suggestion of quarantining? Yeah.
No, not suggestive. Like I'm talking enforced. You cannot be out in public.
For like individuals in non-essential roles, yeah, and like current times and place, in like particular times and places, yes.
No, well, I'm talking just generally, Dean. Did you support assembling during COVID?
It would depend on the assembly, like the assembly of like essential
a
workers.
protest? Say a protest, Dean.
So wait, are you saying in no pandemic setting would you think it is constitutionally viable for us to like prevent people from going into society as much as they did, so that we can reduce how many people die? Do you think that's like not constitutionally viable?
Well, Parker, the subject is the Constitution, upholding the values of the Constitution. That has nothing to do with. I mean, you could say.
And what did courts indicate? Courts indicated it was completely legal to do this.
Parker, please.
Not to mention that Donald Trump was president during quarantine.
Yeah, you're not addressing.
Well, at the beginning, yeah, he was. You're right. He was.
So when the quarantine was enacted, so please explain to me how it wasn't legal.
You weren't supposed to assemble.
What, dude?
Why were people advocating against the Constitution?
Wait, are you arguing that any
right to assemble?
Sorry,
that was the Democrats. You guys know this. The Democrats said, "Hey, do not assemble. You need to be away 6 feet apart." Like we were all here for COVID. This is nothing new. Okay, so I'm asking you two: do you support that, or would you say no? Exercise your right to assemble. It doesn't really matter what the government says.
By assemble, you just mean to go outside. This is
assemble.
This
yeah, no, not outside. Parker, assemble means to get in a
By the way, so
together.
let me just try to make this clear again, because I've already asked this questions, and I'm gonna have to restate the question again. Do you think in any pandemic setting that it would be justified to limit people from going out in public as much to be able to reduce how many people would die? Would that be constitutionally viable under your view, in any way?
Well, I was going to call. I would say. If the people have the right, which we do have the right, no one has the right to tell you can't assemble. So yes, you can assemble even if there's a pandemic. That's
so
my
even
belief.
if there was, say, a pandemic where there was 30% mortality rate, right, and the same level of spread as the flu, you would say in that scenario that you wouldn't support, or you would consider that there'd be no constitutionally viable mechanism of legally restricting people from going out in public in an emergency setting that affects the national security of the country in order to be able to ensure that the American public is safe.
Yeah.
Well, how is it a national...
I will say, you actually are suggesting a little bit more of like a complex constitutional question, like calling into question the constitutionality of quarantines. And generally, I mean, the highest court that we saw rule on quarantines during the pandemic was Wisconsin's Supreme Court. And you know, as a part of their ruling, they did state that quarantines are not unconstitutional. And like generally, this is because of public health powers that are reserved for the states under the 10th Amendment, police powers that states have that gives them broad authority to protect public health and safety. And we've typically seen like courts rule that states have the ability to enact like shutdowns and quarantines as long as like these are implemented in times of emergency and are reasonable and like not arbitrary. So I mean, like that is like the current like status quo legally speaking. This is what we've seen, you know, like state Supreme Courts rule. But it is like a more complex, you know, constitutional question. And yes, I do agree with that.
Okay, so you agree that, I mean, if the government says, "Hey, we're under this pandemic," that you should just listen and be like, "Hey, no one should assemble, no one should exercise this right," and you think the government should have the power to enforce that as well?
Yeah, I think that like a particular restriction on personal freedoms and emergencies are like okay as long as they're reasonable and not arbitrary. They have to have good reason for it. They have to demonstrate that it's reasonable. But if it is reasonable, then absolutely, I think that the restriction on should be allowed.
Dean, that is so against like actually your beliefs, bro. Like, okay, if there was a protest,
I actually demonstrated how this has been upheld by state Supreme Court.
Oh
so
no, but listen, Dean, if there was a protest that was going on, say this is just hypothetical. If there's a protest,
one second.
Okay?
Can you please tell me like exactly what beliefs of mine that goes against? Because I was able to demonstrate how this has been like decided as constitutional by state Supreme Courts.
Yeah. Well, I would argue it's pretty not constitutional because of what the First Amendment says.
Well, then we just go into a debate about our interpretations of the Constitution. That's fine. We could have that. But like this is like completely different than our conversation about the 14th Amendment because not only...
We already conceded that.
Yeah, because like not only is like an interpretation of the 14th Amendment that excludes the children born of undocumented immigrants not viable because of the text of the 14th, but we have case law since like the 19th century to back up an interpretation that would include the children of undocumented immigrants. But now as it relates to the conversation here, questioning the constitutionality of like quarantines during public health emergencies, I actually have case law that backs up they are constitutional, such as Wisconsin Supreme Court, as well as like there's very fair and valid interpretations of the Constitution that delineate it is constitutional and it has been upheld. So it's just completely different. I think that you're losing on this foot too. But we can agree that at the end of the day, it's the courts that determine these interpretations, right?
Well, I think it's the people, not the courts.
Okay, no.
When it comes to your rights, when it comes to your individual rights, it's the people. It's not courts.
What? No, that's completely wrong.
People hold the power. That's why we have the Second Amendment, Dean. That's why the government works for the people, Dean. The government does not, like you have it all twisted and backwards.
Okay, so if you just say that, like for instance, if you are a Black American, you don't have the personal right to freedom of speech, and if like 50% of the people agree with that, is it all of a sudden true?
No, that's why there was a civil war.
Okay, so no, the people don't hold that power. So the people that hold that power in accordance with the Constitution would be the courts. Right?
No, the people in America have always held the power. That's how it was made.
So I mean, but who decides what the interpretation of the Constitution is? The people or the courts that the people elect?
The people, because the people elect the officials.
Okay, yeah, so that's what I just said. The courts that the people elect. So at the end of the day, it's the courts that the people elect, right?
Well, at the end of the day, it's the people. Not the courts. It's not the individual people that just got a job.
So I have a question. So if the Supreme Court rules X, but the people say Y, ultimately speaking, what is the official legal interpretation of the Constitution? X or Y?
It'd be X.
Okay, right. So at the end of the day, it is the courts.
Well, yeah, but you. Okay. I feel like
you just conceded.
Bro just conceded.
So now that you have conceded to that, saying that at the end of the day, it is the courts, right? Well, I mean, we have an. No, so that at the end of the day it'd be Y. So if Supreme Court ruled X and the people said they want Y, at the end of the day it'd be Y.
Dean, why do we have a Second Amendment?
No, you're pivoting. Answer the question.
You
can address that. Address the question.
If I pivot, they won't think I'm not addressing.
Oh my gosh!
So
I just feel like it's so disingenuous.
I'll repeat the question. It's not disingenuous at all. This is just like basic civics 101.
This whole conversation.
I'll re-ask you. You're just getting pissed because you're losing. Listen, I'm gonna ask you the question again.
Dean, it's just you're not being genuine.
There's absolutely nothing disingenuous about me describing checks and balances and the ultimate legal interpretation of the Constitution prescribed by the Constitution. The only thing that is disingenuous here is you suggesting that the ultimate legal interpretation of the Constitution prescribed by the Constitution is something other than what it actually is. And I'm going to prove it with this question. So if the Supreme Court rules X, but the people say they want Y, ultimately speaking, what will be the current legal interpretation of the Constitution, X or Y?
I mean, if you're talking like in a Supreme Court, it's whatever the court rules, Dean. This isn't new to anybody.
There you go. That was all I was trying to demonstrate. It's whatever the court rules is a current legal interpretation.
But what I'm trying to demonstrate to you,
right?
Dean,
so now that you've conceded and agreed that ultimately it is whatever the court rules, insofar as what the current legal interpretation is, well, the current legal interpretation, the constitutionality of the current legal interpretation of the constitutionality of quarantine would be the ruling that we have suggested from the Wisconsin Supreme Court that did argue they were constitutional.
I mean, sure. I mean, like I could care less what a Wisconsin Supreme Court rules either, Dean. I mean, when we're talking about the Constitution, you especially you, I hear you talking about a lot. If you want to be hard on the Constitution and people abiding by it, especially our president, then you better keep it a whole 360. You better not pick and choose because I see it happen all the time on your lives, and you're smart with it. You're a smart guy.
How am I picking and choosing?
Well, you are, because when you want to talk about the First Amendment, which there's 5 rights in the First Amendment, but the big one that I brought up, which was assembly, and if you just look up the simple definition of assembly, it could be gathering in a group with your family, protests, whatever it may be. And then when I turn and ask you and I say, hey, are you okay with the government saying you can't participate in this right because it's for your own safety? Then you say, yeah, that's completely fine.
It's also
do you not see how that contradicts yourself?
That's not the court's interpretation.
It's not contradictory. And also, so see, the reason why you're just like, oh, well, if we just look at the plain text of the First Amendment and we ignore official court interpretations of the First Amendment and we ignore how other constitutional amendments, such as public health powers, were reserved for states under the 10th, or police powers reserved for the state also under the 10th, or like the rulings from the Wisconsin Supreme Court that dictate that that restrictions on personal freedoms and emergencies are constitutional as long as they're reasonable and not arbitrary, have been made. Sure, you have a case, but see, you have to ignore reality in order to have a case, and I have to explore reality in order to have a case. And right now, my case is on the winning side of history because it's been the interpretation that I'm describing to you that's been upheld by state Supreme Courts, and your interpretation is only seen in the brains of the 14-year-old spamming W. Carson down below in the chat. So I think there's going to be a big difference between the constitutional basis of my position and the constitutional basis of your position.